We'll secure the doors here momentarily. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, this morning we are pleased to be joined by Chaplain Chris Jensen of the International Fellowship Foundation in Denton, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from District 33. Members, please rise for the invocation.
Good morning, dear friends of the Senate. I bring you greetings from God's country here, the beautiful eastern shore of Maryland, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average, don't you know? Well, that's what we tell ourselves anyway. As I looked out over the Choptank River here this morning, I was reminded of why I've lived here so long. It's the peace. Peace. That's something we could all use more of in these strange and trying times, isn't it? You know, in his letter to the Philippians, the Apostle Paul wrote from a prison cell to people who were experiencing persecution. And he told them to have peace and joy. See, because as people of faith, we can't let our circumstances define us. Our hope and joy come from within, something that circumstances cannot take away from us. So let's go to the source of our peace and joy in prayer together right now. Heavenly Father, we pray today for the members of Maryland Senate and for their staffs, all of whom so faithfully serve the people of Maryland. Please reveal yourself to our senators and bring them closer to you, that they may hear your voice clearly and distinctly. Speak to them, Lord, of truth, integrity, justice, fairness, and equality. Help them to help others, to right wrongs, and to make our state a better place to live and work. Give each one of them strength to reach out to those across the aisle and work together. We pray that you'd bind their hearts together in ways they could not have imagined, so that they may say with the psalmist, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. Help us, Lord, to remember the lines of poet Amanda Gorman. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. Not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Dear God, help the members of this Maryland Senate to be known as those who the prophet Isaiah referred to when he said, you shall be called the repairers of the breach, the restorers of streets to dwell in. Lord, we pray for healing for those who have been affected by this pandemic. Restore us to the health we need to live and work together again, and let us never take that for granted. Let the men and women of this Senate strive to serve both God and man in this holy task to which you've called them. Help us all to put others before ourselves. And now I commit each one of these friends into your tender, loving care, Father, as I do the memory of our dearly loved and departed brother, Mike Miller. All this we pray in your holy name. Amen. God bless you all real good today.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Although you have given me credit for knowing the good minister, he actually lives in Denton, Maryland, the representative from the Eastern Shore behind me. The reason you called on me is to remind all of us that he is the chaplain for the General Assembly of Maryland. He has served and walked through these halls for more than 20 years. And every Wednesday morning, we've been gathering virtually for an hour from 8 to 9 to share scripture, fellowship, experiences. And again, I would like to invite anyone who would like to join us to drop me a quick email. I'll send you the link. It's a wonderful opportunity to start the day in fellowship and in prayer. And Mr. President, I'd like to move to journalize the prayer.
Without objection, we will certainly journalize the prayer. And Senator, please do pass that along. We'll send it along to everyone. I think the last time I was with the Good Reverend was last Ash Wednesday, was when he was here and had a little service in the James Building. So he is a wonderful, wonderful individual. We appreciate his coming to help our spiritual side here in the General Assembly. Does the Minority Whip want to hit the President? All right. With that, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Senators, two quick administrative notes, pandemic COVID related. The first is a reminder that is only going to become more important over these last 34 days, 33 days. What are we at, 34? Is 34? 35 days. That we've been getting some emails about masks not being worn in the legislative complex, in the office buildings. So please, a reminder to folks that in all public spaces, hallways, entrances, exits, stairwells, it is required that members and staff, anybody in the building, is wearing a mask above their nose, below their chin. It is required as part of our rules, and we've gotten several emails, so we've reached out directly in some cases, but it's gotten to be a few more emails and concerns, so please, vigilance is key. On a related note, I'm sure that senators saw the new updated, or at least some updated guidance from the CDC about those who have been vaccinated and gathering together. We are in touch with who's been advising us throughout, Dr. Wilson, the health secretary here at the state, and so that you all know the process. When the CDC issues its guidance, the Department of Health here in Maryland will then review it and then put it into Maryland-specific language. So when we have updated guidance about post-vaccination, we will be sure to pass that along immediately. We're asking if it will impact our operations at all. We will make sure to talk with our work group, with the COVID work group, should there be anything significant. We don't expect major changes. We might have a little bit more leeway on time limits and along those lines, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves until we kind of get some clearance that it is as we think. But hopefully we have almost everybody has been vaccinated. Some have not, and so we're just going to make sure that we do the right thing. And we got 35 days left. We want to make sure that we keep our guard up and get through this thing successfully. I think we've done a great job, everyone, so far. We need to close strong. So, any other announcements or messages for the good of the order? If not, so be considered the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. Members, we have now passed the deadline. We did a pro forma session yesterday. We called it. We did, didn't we? Yeah, okay. So the deadline has passed. If any members have either LBIs or bills, they will now have to get permission and leave of the Senate in order to introduce them. So the Secretary's office is closed for business for regular introduction. The members will have to have permission from the full body in order to introduce bills at this point forward. But we do have some House bills that have sent over to us. This is calendar number 10. Clerk will read the House bills.
House Bill 30, Delegate Corman, Office of People's Counsel, alterations, Office of People's Counsel, Environmental Reform Act, Finance.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. We just did 47. We just did the quorum call, and we had all 47 here. Let's go ahead and if there are no objections, do the third reading calendars and get those out of the way. Since we have a full chamber, we can start with calendar number 20. Clerk, this is third reading calendar bill number 20. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 3, Senator Griffith, Preserve Telehealth Access Act of 2021.
All right, Senate Bill 3 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 3, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 4, Senator Edwards, Public Ethics, Officials and Employees, Acceptance of Gifts and Prohibited Retaliation.
Senate Bill 4 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 4, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 5, Senator Griffith, Public Health, Implicit Bias Training in the Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities.
Senate Bill 5 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 40 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 5, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 283, Senator Eldredge, Student and Military Voter Empowerment Act.
Senate Bill 283 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Anyone wish to explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 283, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 359, Senator Rosapep, Department of Transportation Urban Tree Program Establishment.
Senate Bill 359 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 359, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 450, Senator Edwards, State Lakes Protection and Restoration Fund, Purpose, Use, and Funding, Sunset Extension.
Senate Bill 450 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 450, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 472, Senator Washington, Baltimore City Alcoholic Beverages Districts, Legislative District Planning References. This is an emergency bill.
Senate Bill 472 is on third reader for final passage. Senators, this is an emergency bill. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 472, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 564, Senator Griffith, Consolidation of Procurement Improvement Council and the Council for the Procurement of Health, Educational, and Social Services.
Senate Bill 564 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 564, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 598, Senator Smith, Procurement Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs, Small Business Reserve Program, and Veteran-Owned Small Business Enterprise Program.
Senate Bill 598 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 598, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 638, Senator Augustine, Maryland Insurance Commissioner, Specialty Mental Health Services and Payment of Claims Enforcement. This is an emergency bill.
Senate Bill 638 is on third reader for final passage. Senators, this is an emergency bill. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 638, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 674, Senator Eldredge, Environment Commission on Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities Reform.
Senate Bill 674 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 674, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, let's do this special order calendar. This is calendar number 23. I believe we may have a motion on this bill. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 10, Senator WALDSTREICHER, Election Law, Polling Sites, Firearms, Prohibition.
Senate Bill 10 is on third reader for final passage. Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. The senator from the 18th Legislative District, I move that we move this bill back to second reader for the purposes of amendment, please.
The senator has moved to return the bill back, reconsider the vote by which the bill passed to third reader. Are there any objections to the senator's motion? Seeing no objection, without objection, so ordered. The bill is now on second reader, subject to an amendment. The senator has an amendment.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. I have an amendment number 174831/1.
All right, give us just a moment here. All right, do we have it up there? Okay, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. With thanks to the chair of the committee and the gentleman from Southern Maryland, this amendment allows an on-duty officer to bring their weapon to the polls, as well as an off-duty officer if that officer is displaying the officer's badge or credential. I move the amendment.
Senator moves the amendment. Are there, from the floor there, from the chair of the committee?
Yeah, Mr. President, I've spoken with the sponsor, and it's not as far-reaching as the one the body rejected last week, so we have no objection.
No objections. Are there any objections to the adoption of the amendment? Chair recognizes Senator from District 29.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the maker of the amendment. I just wanted to say I'll be green on this. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 10 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. All right. Do we have a minority leader have amendments? Still, okay. Let's do some committee reports. We'll get those out of the way. We'll see where we get. Also, in the meantime, while we have a bit of time, does the senator from District 8 have an announcement about today's attire from Baltimore County?
I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
Just wondering if there was at the beginning I forgot to make the announcement.
Oh, about
that if anyone is interested in this exquisite participation.
I was doing the Senate work at that time, but right now we'll go off and do some more Senate work to bring us all together. Many of you have received the masks that I gave out today. It is Tuesday, and some of you may not have. If you did not get your mask, please stop right by my desk, and I have them. They're compliments of, may I say the senator's
Sure.
name? Senator Griffith. And so if you would like one, please feel free to stop by and say hi anyway to my little office here.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Mr. President. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes, Chair recognizes Senator for Prince George's.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to again mind the colleagues as we are celebrating Women's Month. We have a distinguished woman among us, and she just spoke, and she's done so much work for women and women veterans and to bring us together as a community and a family. And we just want to thank her for her leadership on those issues and invite all of us to celebrate in this family expression with her. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for that observation, Senator. Thank you so much.
And
Senator.
I would just like to say, if the gentlemen that feel that their masculinity is kind of like not what they want to wear a mask like this, if they have a wife or a mother or a sister at home that may enjoy the mask, they're welcome to take one.
Well, if we can all be like the Eastern Shore, where the women from our invocation this morning, thank you for that. Thank you, Senator, as always.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Let's go ahead to the report on the Committee on Finance. We have two reports. Let's start with number 13. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 51, Senator Bailey, Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland Property Management, Southern Maryland Regional Agriculture Center, favorable with one amendment.
All right, Chair recognizes Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 51 authorizes the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland to act as a property manager for the Southern Maryland Regional Agricultural Center owned by and located within St. Mary's County. The amendment adds a sponsor. There's no fiscal impact, no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. First up is the amendment. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 51 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 80, Senator Kagan, Economic Development, Maryland Technology Development Corporation, alterations, favorable with one amendment.
Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Vice Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 80 adds 4 members to the Board of Directors of the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, TEDCO, 2 appointed by the President of the Senate and 2 appointed by the Speaker of the House, subject to specified conditions. The bill also renames TEDCO's Executive Director position to be Chief Executive Officer. Requirements and duties of the position are otherwise unchanged. Amendment number 1 requires that one of the representatives appointed to the board by the governor represent colleges and universities, must represent a historically black college or university, except that any single historically black college or university may not be represented for more than 2 consecutive terms. There was no fiscal impact, no opposition to the committee hearing. I move amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report, Mr. President.
All right. Floor leader moves to the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. The question first is on the amendment. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 80 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 299, Senator Carter, Human Services, Trauma-Informed Care, Commission and Training, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee. Senate Bill 299?
Yes.
Yes, as the floor leader.
Senate Bill 299 establishes the Commission on Trauma-Informed Care and the Department of Human Resources. Each commission member must participate in specified training, and specified agency heads must designate 2 staff members to carry out responsibilities of the commission. Among its duties, the commission must assist in the identification of any state program or service that affects children and youth, and assist in the development of a statewide strategy toward an organizational culture shift into a trauma-responsive state government. Trauma-informed care means mental health treatment that focuses on the high prevalence of trauma experienced by individuals receiving mental health services. A very similar bill passed the Senate last session. Amendment 1 adds sponsors, alters the title, and is technical. Amendment 2 increases the membership of the commission. Amendment 3 adds to the duties of the commission by requiring the commission to study developing a process and framework for implementing the Childhood Experiences Aware program. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Question on the amendments. Madam Chair, does this include the ACEs study, a study about ACEs? Does this bill include adverse childhood experiences? No? On this bill? The amendments? Well, that's all right. Question on the amendments. Any discussion on the amendments? If so, if not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 299 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 407, Senator KRAMER, electricity net energy metering limit, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 407 increases the statewide limit on net energy metering capacity for eligible customer generation from 1,500 megawatts to 3,000 megawatts. The amendment is technical. There is no fiscal impact. Mr. President, I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Question on the amendments. Chair recognizes Senator from District 33.
Thank you very much. I have a question for the floor leader.
Will the floor leader yield? It appears so. Senator may proceed.
Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Senator, could you share with the body how the limit of the increase was established?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. You mean as far as the increase?
Yeah, we went from 1,500 to 3,000.
Okay.
How was the 3,000 chosen? Was there a scientific method on that?
So for a decade now, we have had in place this 1,500 megawatt cap. The Public Service Commission not long ago opined that we might want to start looking at increasing the cap because we have currently in place approximately 850 megawatts that are active, with another 400 to 450 megawatts in the pipeline. So we're at about 1,250 megawatts in total, and these projects tend to take 3 to 4 years. So the committee made the policy decision that we wanted to increase it to the 3,000 cap to ensure that we continue to have a robust solar program here in the state, and did not want to wait until we start bumping up against the cap that currently exists.
Thank you very much. So the next question is a little technical, but I wanted the body to understand that this is the community solar program. Is that the term they use?
It relates to community solar, as well as individuals who have solar, as well as business that is looking to participate in solar. So it's a broad array.
And we're talking in EHE about allowing schools to have solar panels on their roofs. So it's all connected.
To some degree, correct, yes.
So my point for the body is when this energy is created and not used at the facility where it's located, it's put into the grid on a net basis. There's no charge for infrastructure or distribution. Is that correct?
Yes, in that what happens is if, let's say I have solar panels on my roof and I use 300 kilowatts, and I actually generated 400 kilowatts. The difference goes onto the grid, and then when I need to pull that additional 100 kilowatts, I can use that 100 kilowatts. I'm credited for it.
Right. I'm focused on distribution charges. For instance, if I buy my electricity from Exelon, and they send it to us, BG&E charges me, is the bill collector for the energy generated, but also charges a distribution charge to get it to my house. Is that right?
Correct.
But if we're doing solar, there's no charge for the distribution. There's no infrastructure charge. My point is, if we significantly increase solar, the cost of distributing the electricity falls on the rest of the ratepayers who use the normal energy production. Is that accurate?
No, not completely accurate at all. And in fact, the Maryland Energy Administration, in their letter of information to the committee, offered the following. It is worth mentioning that the benefits of net energy metering are shared by society at large, both ratepayers and non-ratepayers. Maryland lawmakers and regulators have historically concluded that the environmental and grid benefits promoted by net energy metering outweigh the limited impact to ratepayers. Net energy metering is an excellent tool for the continued promotion of distributed energy resources while providing grid and environmental benefits to Marylanders. So this was their letter of information. They have no dog in this fight at all, and that is the sentiment that they expressed.
Okay, thank you, Senator. I appreciate your explanation for the body. Mr. President, I have a potential amendment request that the bill and the amendments lie over under the rules.
The Senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendments will be laid over under the rules. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 425, Senator Augustine. Work group on screening related to adverse childhood experiences, favorable with one amendment.
You found aces. Yes. Chair recognizes bill sponsors. The floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you earlier mentioned when we were talking about the bill that dealt with trauma-informed care, the underlying issue are adverse childhood experiences, which you were referencing. This bill, Senate Bill 425, establishes a work group on screening related to adverse childhood experiences. The work group is required to study various issues and make recommendations on several topics, including the development of screening tools, changes to new student examinations, and improvements to the youth risk behavior and youth tobacco surveys. The Department of Health must provide staff for the work group. The work group must submit a report of its findings and recommendations to the Governor and the General Assembly by October 1st, 2022. The amendment adds a member of the State Domestic Violence Coalition to the work group and requires the State Superintendent of Schools to consult certain organizations when appointing certain members. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. Question on the amendment? Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 425 is hereby ordered, printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 520, Senator KLAUSMEIER, Behavioral Health Services and Voluntary Placement Agreements, Children and Young Adults, Report Modifications, favorable.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Senate Bill 520 modifies and expands the required contents of the Director of Behavioral Health Administration's annual report on behavioral health services for children and young adults in the state. The bill also requires that additional specified information be included in the Social Services Administration's annual report on voluntary placement agreements for children and young adults in the state. There are no amendments. There is no fiscal impact. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 520 is hereby ordered, printed for third reader. Let's get this. Let's knock out the rest of finance. Report number 14. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 561, Senator Hershey, Electric Cooperatives, Meetings, Alterations, favorable with two amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 561 authorizes an electric cooperative to hold annual and special meetings virtually or with a combination of in-person and virtual attendance. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 specifies that the members of the cooperative by a majority vote must confirm in the cooperative's bylaws how meetings may be held. There is no fiscal impact. There is no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Question on the amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. The question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 561 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 609, Senator Augustine, Economic Development, Maryland Industrial Development Financing Authority, Marketing Plan, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Prince George's as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 609 requires the Maryland Industrial Development Financing Authority, MIDFA, to work to increase the utilization of its programs and funds to assist minority and women-owned businesses in the state, and two, to consider incentives to encourage the use of its credit insurance services. MIDFA must develop and implement a marketing plan to increase awareness of its credit insurance services. The plan must identify methods to increase the utilization of such services by community banks and other financial institutions that make loans to historically disadvantaged businesses and businesses in rural areas of the state. The amendment adds a sponsor. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. Question on the amendment. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 609 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 610, Senator Casserly, Lodging Establishments, Accessible Rooms for Individuals with Disabilities, Deadlines, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 610 postpones by 1 year each phase of a 4-year period, which requires each ADA accessible room in a lodging establishment to be furnished with a very specific bed measuring at least 20 inches, but not more than 23 inches from the floor to the top of the mattress, and with at least a 7-inch vertical clearance under the bed for lift access. This phased-in requirement we enacted just last year. There are no amendments, no fiscal impact, no opposition to the committee hearing. Again, we're just adding 1 year to the 4-year period. Move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 610 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 652, Senator KLAUSMEIer, Public Health, Long-Term Care Planning, favorable with two amendments.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. Senate Bill 652 requires the Department of Health by April 1st, 2022 to develop and publish materials to assist Maryland residents with long-term care planning. The materials developed must be consistent with the recommendations made in the final report of the Task Force on Long-Term Care Education and Planning. The Maryland Health Care Commission, the Department of Disabilities, and the Department of Aging must update their websites in accordance with recommendations of the task force. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 requires the department to ensure that the materials published under the bills are understandable to individuals with limited literacy skills. There is no fiscal impact. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report. And I just ask, before I say one more thing, that all the young people in this room will be old one day and start looking into long-term care, fiscal policy. So
very true.
you.
Very, very true. This is
I'm a little bit late
challenge.
on it, but
Complicated. All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments in the favorable committee report. Question on the amendments, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 652 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 704, Senator BEIDLE, Nursing Homes, Transfer of Ownership, Site visits and surveys, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 704's amendment requires that the Maryland Department of Health will conduct a full survey and an unannounced follow-up survey of a licensed nursing home if ownership of the nursing home is transferred to a person that does not own or operate another nursing home in the state. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the site visit requirements and requires a full survey by the department within 3 months after the transfer, and requires an unannounced on-site follow-up survey within 120 days to cover deficiencies noted in the original survey. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Question on the amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 704 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reader. All right, so we finished up with finance. Let's get to our laid-over bills. This is calendar number 10. If there are no objections here, clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 107, Senator Hayes, Labor and Employment, Secure Maryland Wage Act.
All right, question before the body is on the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments first, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendments say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, Chair recognizes the senator from, on the amendment. Okay. On the report, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Senator from District 33 has an amendment. Senator, if the senator could read the number.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My amendment number is 193-429-1.
All right, 429 looks like it's up. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much. And I hope the chairman of the committee did receive it. We sent it over this morning. It's pretty simple. Mr. President, this bill has to do with wages which are paid at our airport, BWI. We know that the bill is intended to include food service worker, transportation workers, and other people who provide services around the airport complex, behind the TSA barriers, so to speak. But we have an issue because the bill is designed to raise hourly rates, and our airlines that service BWI, in fact, pay considerably more than the bill requires. So why am I trying to exclude them from the bill? It's not the hourly rate. It's the fact that the bill is prescriptive in requiring these airlines to provide extensive administrative reports. It adds an extra layer of expense to the administration of their operation, and it's not needed. So I'd ask that the committee accept this as a favorable report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senators move the amendment. Floor leader or chair?
Madam Chair, can I take this?
Yes, chair recognizes the floor leader of the bill, followed by the chair of the committee.
Thank you so very much. Good morning, Senator. God bless you. We heard this amendment in committee, although I haven't had a chance to see the amendment. We spoke about this amendment, and the committee decided not to pass it along. And the reason why we decided not to pass it along is because the purpose of this piece of legislation is really to reward those workers who are in a line of danger. To reward those, we know that BWI Airport and some of our is very perceptive because of its profile, very receptive to terrorist attacks and other things. And the employees that this hope to affect are those employees that are in harm's way. They're among the lowest wage earners there at the airport.
And if you look at some of the other regional airports, major airports like Dulles and Reagan, the wages that these employees are paid are a lot lower than our neighboring competitors. And one of the things that we were able to talk to MIA to negotiate was the language that the senator proposes to replace, and that is the language of the study. And so with that, colleagues, I ask that you please reject the amendment by the senator from 33rd District.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the chair of the committee, then followed by the maker of the amendment.
Mr. President and members, since the maker of the amendment indicates he sent me the amendment this morning and I haven't seen it yet, I would just like to lay it over so the full committee could take a look at the amendment.
Senator, I believe the bill has already been laid over. We'd have to special order the bill. Does the chair want to?
Sir, Mr.
Yes,
President.
Chair recognizes the senator from Harford County.
I'll make a motion that we special order so that the
All right.
chair can discuss.
Chair recognizes the floor leader. Senator from Baltimore City on the special order.
I'm sorry, what was
on the
yeah,
motion
sure.
of special order.
Absolutely, we'll special order the bill.
Okay, to the appropriate time tomorrow. Are there any objections to the special order? If not, the bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time tomorrow. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 119, Senator Gazzoni, Clean Water Commerce Act of 2021. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, Senate Bill 119. The question is on the 4 committee amendments. Yes, Chair recognizes the minority leader.
Yes, if we could just special order this until after Senate Bill 414, we'd like to deal with them kind of together.
Are there any objections to special ordering the bill until after the next bill? Without objection, so order. The bill is special ordered until after the next bill. The clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 324, Senator Elfrith, Environment and Natural Resources, Complaints, Inspections and Enforcement, Information Maintenance and Reporting. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
Just as a clarification, that was a special order for 2 bills, not 1 bill. It has been special ordered to 2 bills from now. So question is on the adoption of the 5 committee amendments on Senate Bill 324. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I'm the person who asked that this bill be laid over. The questions have been resolved, so I'm good to go.
Thank you, Senator. All right, any further discussion on the amendments? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 5 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 324 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 414, Senator Penske, Climate Solutions Now Act of 2021. Questions on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right. Question is on the 7 committee amendments. 7 committee amendments. Any discussion on the amendments? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 7 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Chair recognizes the senator from the Upper Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the floor leader rise for questions, please?
The floor leader yield. Yes, appears so. Senator,
Surely.
proceed.
Thank you very much. Just have a few questions on the funding of this. As I read, there's mainly 2 different existing funds that money would be diverted from in order to pay for this. The first is the CEIF fund.
That's correct.
Honestly, I don't think I've heard CEIF fund as much as I heard it this year. So I guess everybody recognizes that there's money in there. I always thought it was for good programs to fund renewable and clean energy programs, but I guess everybody has other ideas on where that could better go. But at least this bill that you have says that it wouldn't divert any funds from CEIF over $50 million, right? Until the first $50 million would stay within CEIF.
That's correct.
And then everything else up to $20 million would go into this new climate solution account. You had mentioned in the testimony last week that other states were going, I mean, the question being is what happens if there's not enough money from the greenhouse gas auctions or allowances that would go into REGI that would then come into the C fund?
We have language in the bill, and I can point to the pages, that prepare for that possibility and how, which of the categories of funding should be stepped down in what priority order.
So yeah, I'm sorry, I just saw in the fiscal note, but MEA then starts to prioritize. Is that how it works?
No, it's actually set in the bill. It's on. It's on pages 34 to 36
of the.
It says that, basically, if I can summarize.
Sure.
In any year that funds in the account are not sufficient to fully fund all programs, allocations should be prioritized in following order, and it lists 6 of the programs included in the bill.
Okay, so is it, I mean, again, with this being such a all-encompassing bill, is it expected that the C fund will take in more than 50 and be able to pay for what's in this bill?
That's a great question. And a couple of years ago, they did a fiscal note, or last year they did a fiscal note, and said they made their projections on the amount of money coming in being the floor. I want to say $2.34. Since then, one state has entered and a second is expected to enter, and the clearing price for the credits was not at $2.34. It was 3 times that, at $7.60. And that's actually before the state of Pennsylvania is expected to join. So the numbers are going up pretty significantly.
Well, with more states joining, that means obviously more states are actively looking for those proceeds, or will be in line to get them. But at the same time, as we're seeing here as well too, there's legislation to start shutting down the facilities that pay into the REGI auctions, right? So we have more states looking for the proceeds, less energy generating facilities adding into the fund. Doesn't that tend to lean towards a decrease in the amount of funds that might be available?
Over a number of years, that's absolutely true. This bill calls for funding for 10 years, and it has stipulations if the $20 million is not available, how to lower the costs in what priority order. So I believe as more states get in and the value of the credits goes up, which is the whole idea, is to shift from fossil fuels to clean energy, that it will be enough money for the next 10 years to fund the program. But if it's not, we step down some of the programs.
Okay, I see that. Thank you. The second source of funding for this is the Bay Restoration Fund. And this bill then says that MDE must divert $20 million a year for the next 8 years for the tree planting.
15.
50?
15.
15. Okay, that might have been amended. My apologies.
There's another bill that addresses this fund as well.
Okay, so $15 million a year from the Bay Restoration Fund for the tree planting program?
Correct.
Okay. I'm interested, how did you, I mean, the Bay Restoration Fund obviously does a lot of the wastewater treatment plants. My district has benefited from the ability of being able to use that for a huge septic problem that we had on Lower Kent Island. We've seen lots of municipalities being able to benefit from that. Are we going to then start taking away from some of these local projects in order to put money into this program?
That's a really good question, Senator. The priority from the very beginning, when this passed under Governor Ehrlich, I think it was, right, was first the major wastewater treatment plants, because they were clearly the most effective and have been. Most of them have been done. We're still paying off some of the bonds for some of them. Right. Then the next step was the minor ones, the smaller ones. And we've made pretty good headway into that as well. Then once or twice since then, we've added other categories for use of that fund. And the administration tries to look at return on investment. How much nitrogen will be reduced for each dollar, essentially. But I can tell you, I have the list in front of me. For 2021, there were 39 applications from jurisdictions, 39 different projects that, if funded, would have cost $207 million. In this side of the fund, there's only $55 million available. So 3/4 of them never get funded anyway, either because there hasn't been enough money or it wasn't a good investment. It's also very important to understand that not all of the categories are for cleaning up the bay. For example, sewer overflows is a health issue. It's not an environmental issue. So this legislature has already added at least one category that isn't about cleaning up the bay. All of that being said, when you plant trees along a stream, along buffer, it is one of the best filters and a return on investments for cleaning up the bay. So that's why planting trees, I call them a twofer. They absorb carbon dioxide, which is good for the environment and addressing climate change, but at the same time they have the co-benefit of cleaning up the bay and acting as a filter for nitrogen and phosphorus running into the bay. So that's why we think this is appropriate.
When you say planting trees in the buffer, you're talking the buffer between the shoreline and the land? Is that the buffers that we're speaking about?
Yeah, near streams, rivers, not necessarily the large body of waters.
Right.
But yes.
Okay. Just go back, and I appreciate, but how much comes into the Bay Restoration Fund each year in terms of revenue?
Okay. $26 million goes into the septics category, and $115 million goes into wastewater. A total of 140 or 141.
And then, have we?
Let me walk. I know where you're headed. So the wastewater, 115 million. 30 million goes to pay off upgrades for the major wastewater treatment plants. 10 million goes into operation and maintenance of wastewater treatment plants. 20 million goes into minor wastewater treatment plant upgrades, which leaves $55 million in that fund. And that's where this bill and another bill will take money to also work to clean up the bay. And then of the other 26 million in septics, 15 million is spent on upgrading best available technology for septics and connecting failing septics, and $11 million for cover crops. And I would also add, there are also other funds, the revolving fund, that also address some of these needs and concerns as well.
So you're right. So that was the part I was getting to with the septic upgrades and things of that nature that are especially within the critical area. Obviously, the state certainly hasn't addressed all of that yet, and we continue to hear that funds generally run out for the BMP for the septic systems, or BAT systems, I should say. Has it been determined that planting trees is better for the environment than upgrading septic systems in the critical area?
You know, that's analyzed project by project, so I don't have an absolute answer. In some categories, trees are absolutely more advantageous. In some, they may not be.
Okay. Okay. I greatly appreciate your responses. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you. Senator Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Finance Committee.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just a quick question. Gentlemen seem concerned about the C fund, and that is primarily funded from Reggie auctions, right, Mr. Chair? Is that a fair statement? That's where the money flows into the C fund from those auctions, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, we don't have to theoretically, we've thought for some time, or the Senate's thought for some time, that the amount flowing into the C fund would actually increase because more states are now part of REGI. Would that be a fair statement? Now, I'm looking at some data from just last week. This isn't a theory. This is just last week. New auctions, state of Maryland, in fact, brought in almost $22 million last week compared to just a year ago at the same time when the allowances flowing in through REGI eventually to our CEF was only at $13 million. Is that consistent with your understanding of what's happening there?
It is, and those auctions happen 4 times a year, so that's not an annual, that's a quarterly.
Right, so this is just last week, and so it appears that what we have thought for some time is this CEF fund is actually being enhanced, there's more money in there, and so I just wanted to bring that out. This is the highest amount of money coming in through REGI since 2015, and significantly almost to the tune of 9 or 10 million over just last year. So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make sure that my data, my information was accurate on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, question is on the favorable committee report as amended. Further discussion. Chair recognizes the Minority Leader.
Yeah, just talk on the bill just for a second.
On the bill, Senator may proceed.
Thank you. And I wanted to publicly thank the chairman for the work he's done on this bill and bills prior. As I've told him before, I think he's done a lot of good work for our state in the environmental area. And when I entered this session, my goal was I could vote for this bill. That was my genuine desire because we share the same goals. We want a clean environment. We want to reduce greenhouse gases. But the debate comes on which is the best way to accomplish our shared goals. And one of the main concerns I have is the diversion of the Bay Restoration Fund. It takes, with its companion bill, about $35 million out of $55 million that's available. So over 60% of the funds out of that Bay Restoration Fund are going to be diverted. And they're going to take away from local projects. And there's quite a few, and I reached out to the department to find what bill or what projects were submitted to them and which ones, and they actually prioritize them, and they go down a list and they say, okay, here's the priority, and then when they run out of money, they cut it at that point, and then the other ones come back the next year and try to apply and get the money. So I looked at those, and there's a lot of them. Allegheny County, Charles County, with basement backups due to the storms, Wicomico, Prince George's County, Baltimore City, and then there's 5 more projects from Prince George's, and these are based on priority. Prince George's again, Washington, Baltimore City, Charles, 5 more Baltimore City projects, 2 more Baltimore City, 3 Montgomery County projects, Harford County with failing septic systems, and there's 11 more pages, and I'm not going to go through all those. But what we have to say is when we take over 60% of these monies out of this fund, it's going to affect each one of your districts. And the projects that they need, whether it's sewage on the streets or whatever's occurring, they are now going to be either they're not going to get it or they're going to be years later not getting it. So this impacts all of us. So we have to say, is this the best approach of funding this? We agree with the funding mechanism as far as to get the money, but taking it away from our local projects is where we disagree. And we wanted to try to provide some solutions. So we have some amendments coming up, so hopefully we can vote for this in a bipartisan manner. So I hope you would give us consideration as we bring forth some of our amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, questions on the report as amended. Further discussion on the report? Chair recognizes Senator from District 35.
Mr. President, I would have an amendment after the report's accepted.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the report, any discussion on the report? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Chair recognizes the chair of the committee, followed by the Senator from District 35.
Yeah, Mr. President, I have an amendment.
Senator has an amendment. If the Senator could read the amendment, please.
964339/1.
39/1. One moment. All right, Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have heard the discussion about the Bay Restoration Fund, and as I've explained, 3/4 of the projects are never funded anyway, and I'm sure pretty soon we're going to start talking about Valley Protein. But holding off on that, Mr. President, if we don't want to jeopardize any projects currently under consideration, so this amendment would push back the funding from the BRF 1 year going forward. So I would move the amendment.
Senator moves the amendment. Any objections to the amendment? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the Middle Eastern Shore.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that amendment. That's a very interesting one. I just have a question for the floor leader, the chairman.
Senator may proceed.
I'm really sensitive about this, as you know, because of living in Dorchester County and representing Wycomico. This pushes it out, so that, and part of what I was thinking about, if there could be a way to, I guess, phase in to coincide with how the projects are being funded, that would be a good alternative. So this amendment has a little bit of an appeal to me. But my bigger question is, because we're a low-income county, both of the counties to which I refer, we have a hard time with many of our small municipalities being able to provide the match to even to be eligible for funding. And that's both wastewater treatment, and then I have a lot of, like I have a little community in Wycomico County that has 30 houses with grossly failing septic systems. And I'm trying to figure out in my brain how do we allow for not offsetting so much of the Bay Restoration funds that it eliminates the possibility in the future for them to come into some kind of remedy and upgrading and access to wastewater treatment or improved plants. And I guess if you think about it with me for a minute, like access to broadband, you know, we assume that everybody has access to broadband, and we've worked on that for years to get a backbone, to get middle coverage, and then get end mile coverage. On the Eastern Shore, it was very illuminating to me when I first became elected that we had communities within 5 miles of my house who did not have water and sewer. Now, this was in between 1995 and 2000. We were able, through USDA and state funding, to be able to bring some of those communities. And I have to share with you, these were minority communities. I still have a number, or we still have a number of minority communities on the Eastern Shore who do not have the kind of access they need. So we don't have the broadband, if you will. We don't have the backbone. We don't have that kind of an organized wastewater treatment sewer program. We have failing BIP ponds. We have cesspools, believe it or not. And we have some failing septics along with wastewater treatments that need improvement or upgrades. I'm just trying to figure out, and I wish I had a magic wand to be able to put that all into place so we would price it out, know what it was, so then we could address, you know, adding other projects into the use of that fund. So my question is, and I'm sure you've given a lot of thought to this, how do I reconcile that? Because I am for an improved environment. I do want to get the biggest bang for our buck with reducing nitrogen and phosphorus. I do get sea level rise. I do get shoreline erosion. But how do I reconcile to myself and to my constituents that there will be funding in the future to be able to bring these other projects or communities that I think could make a big reduction in nitrogen, phosphorus, because I can't quantify that right now. Can you help me with that?
Sure. First of all, Madam Senator, this amendment just deals with pushing it off a year and extending it a year at the back end. I believe there are going to be some amendments that start to deal with some of your concerns. But let me mention two things. There's a separate septics account.
Correct.
And that's $15 million annually for upgrading septics or connecting failing septics to public sewer. This doesn't affect that at all.
Right.
And in the other bill, the chairman of Budget and Tax, that also targets stormwater projects in disadvantaged communities. Now, I'm not sure if the small, poor towns you're talking about will fit under that or not, but there are efforts in many categories to try to help and effectuate improvements in those areas. I think it's still important to understand that 3/4 of the projects get rejected every year anyway. The MDE has not had a blank check on this. So, and some are in fact more cost effective than others. So, yeah, again, this amendment gives another year for the projects that are being under consideration. And like I said, I believe there's some other amendments that may come closer to addressing your issue. This also cleans up the bay. It also cleans up the air and addresses asthma and a number of other issues at the same time. Some goes into urban areas where these effects have been very disproportionate, and also in rural areas as well. So I'm not sure how else to answer your question, Senator.
Well, thank you very much. This takes it a little bit better, but I think there's still more room to go, so maybe we'll hear about some more amendments. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Questions on the amendment? Senator from District 34 on the amendment, or a separate issue? On the amendment.
On the amendment, if I could ask the floor your question, please, Chair.
Senator may proceed.
Sure.
Thank you. So as I understand this amendment, we're just pushing the time frame back, but we're still going upon I think you announced the conclusion that the tree plantings were a better alternative for the environment. I'm sorry, yeah, the tree plantings were a better alternative for the environment than the projects that we're pushing back. Isn't that, am I saying that correctly?
No.
Okay.
The first half is correct. We're pushing off the funding of the 5 million trees that serve dual purposes of cleaning the bay and reducing carbon dioxide. That is correct.
But, okay, we're pushing it off 1 year, though.
Correct.
So,
I mean, if you think it's a bad idea, even with this amendment, it's a better but still a bad idea in your mind. This to give some flexibility in year one.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand the conclusion that somehow there's been a study done as to each of these projects and that they're not as beneficial as the tree plantings.
As I answered this earlier, there are some tree plantings that are much more cost effective than some of these projects, and some less so.
Yeah, I'm looking for that study.
Excuse me, I had the floor. You asked me a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the other factor to remember is some of these projects have nothing to do with the environment. They have to do with public health, like sewer overflows. They get funded too. They're on those proposals. They're on those request lists as well. So, the list is already some apples and oranges.
Right.
We're already MDE is already having to make some judgments whether this sewer overflow versus this failing septic, which has priority. And to be honest with you, they have addressed some sewer overflows. And some jurisdictions are under legal consent decrees to make some changes, and they've got to do it whether they get money from the state or not. Yeah. So MDE sometimes says, yes, we'll help, no, we won't. So this is not new.
No, I understand that. It's just sort of this, I'm trying to understand the basis, the thought basis, the scientific basis, the analysis, the data crunching that went into the blanket statement that the tree plantings would somehow be more beneficial to our society as a whole than the elimination of raw sewage running into streams and all. I'm just trying to understand that piece of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's going to be an answer that's going to be acceptable to you, Senator.
I guess it depends on who's walking through the sewage, right? Whether the sewage is in my yard or your yard. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? If there are no objections to the amendment, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes Senator from 35th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. And briefly, I'd like to speak to the previous amendment, and that'll kind of roll into the amendment I'm proposing.
Senator, just if we could get the amendment, there's nothing before the body at the moment, so we have to have something before the body. So the senator's welcome to give those remarks if we could just get the amendment number.
Sure. Amendment number 873 929/1.
929/1. It's up. Senator, may proceed.
Okay, thank you. So the previous amendment we just heard about, what it does, it pushes it back a year, which actually was a part of this amendment, so that won't be necessary in this amendment. But let me just go through some of the projects that are saved for at least for this year because of the previous amendment, and that'll lay the groundwork for the amendment I'm proposing. Queen Anne's County, Southern Kent Island, Sanitary Project Phase 3, septic connection in Cecil, District 36, connect Triumph Industrial Park to County Sanitary Sewer, Charles County, District 28, Town of La Plata, MS4, stormwater upgrades, combined sewer overflows, District 1, Frostburg Elimination Project, Georges Creek Headwaters Interceptor. And then there's 3 other ones that are also included. City of Fruitland, District 38, in a small and disadvantaged community that would help with flooding, erosion, and structural issues within the existing stormwater conveyance channel, best management practices, and stream restoration within Tuxas Branch drainage. Number 2. In Prince George's County, a project, sanitary sewer reconstruction, Parkway sewer basin. That is what that project would do is repair, replace, rehab sewers and manholes. It's a consent order project, construct nearly 3 miles of 6 to 24-inch diameter sewer main and 28 manholes. And the last one I would like to mention is in Allegheny, District 1, 70-inch parallel pipeline from mill race to combined sewer overflow storage. The community status there, large and disadvantaged, and the project description is to fix combined sewer overflow consent order. So the question is, well, the previous amendment fixed those projects, so why am I offering this one? Well, I'd like to just point out as we go forward, starting FY23, think of all the projects maybe in my district or one of my colleagues' districts that won't be funded because between this bill, 414, and the Clean Water Commerce Act, there's going to be $35 million coming out of that Bay Restoration Fund annually. So I'll speak to my amendment now. What this amendment does ensures the most cost-effective projects are selected so that money spent is making the biggest impact to meet our Bay total maximum daily load goals. It limits the amount of funding for personnel costs, since this is a capital funding and should primarily go towards project implementation costs. It limits the amount of funding for the Chesapeake Bay Trust administrative costs, since this is a capital funding and should primarily go toward project implementation costs. It also amends the current Bay Restoration Fund statute to limit grant funding to privately owned minor wastewater treatment plants to 50% of eligible costs. It also reduces the total funding transferred from the Bay Restoration Fund to tree planting efforts at the Chesapeake Bay Trust, Department of Agriculture, Department of Natural Resources by 50% each to limit the aggregate demand on the Bay Restoration Fund from this legislation. This will ensure that there is still some funding in the Bay Restoration Fund for sewer overflow consent orders, stormwater measures that address water quality, climate resiliency, and flooding, and connecting failing septics to advanced treatment wastewater treatment plants. And finally, it also reduces the per acre sign-up bonus by 50%. So right now in the bill, it's $1,000 an acre to drop it to $500, which would match the other funding reductions. Now, personally, I would rather see no money diverted out of the Bay Restoration Fund, but I feel like this amendment is reasonable. It's kind of taken half instead of the full amount. And as I mentioned before, the projects I mentioned earlier are, they're off the chopping block now with the previous amendment. But think of all the projects in our districts that could be affected in years to come when we combine this $15 million, the other $20 million from the other bill. And we've heard several times from the bill sponsor about, well, there's already all these requests that aren't getting funded. Well, I think that argument works the other way. That means we're going to have $35 million more that aren't going to be funded. So it's already bad enough now where we can't fund tons and tons of these requests, these projects, and it's only going to get worse when you take a whole $35 million out of that. So with that, I feel like this is a reasonable amendment, and I would ask for a favorable green vote. Thank you.
All right, Senator has moved the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Yeah, Mr. President, and let me start, and then I want to yield to the Chair of Budget and Tax, if I could. Who do these grants go to, ladies and gentlemen? Local governments, county governments, some nonprofits that participate in taking care of wastewater treatment plants. That's true in 99% of the cases. But guess what I learned this week? Valley Protein, a private company, is getting $13 million. A private company is getting these tax dollars to take care of their emissions. So to say the focus is on this bill, which is going to plant trees and help clean up the bay and clean up the air, yet many of those projects are being pushed aside to give $13 million to a privately owned for-profit company. That wasn't mentioned, ladies and gentlemen. And when I brought this up with the Secretary of the Environment, he said, well, we're not precluded from giving them money. So now we have an amendment that says, well, let's put in statute that we can give up to 50% of their request from state tax dollars to pay these private entities. We haven't heard about that yet today. We've heard about the small jurisdictions being pushed off, but yet no words, and in fact, codifying that we should give to private sector companies. Ladies and gentlemen, I would urge a red vote on this, and I'd like to yield my time to the Chair of Budget and Tax.
Mr. President.
Yes, Senator, we're going to yield to the Budget and Tax on the question of the finance, and then we'll go to the Senator from the Middle Eastern Shore. Senator from Chair of Budget and Tax on the finances.
Thank you, Mr. President. So it's no doubt when you start digging into all of this, you realize that it's a complicated set of puts and takes. The gentleman, maker of the amendment, was making some suggestions about all those projects that he read off that somehow they wouldn't get funded without the chairman's amendment. And I believe that that contention is wrong to begin with. It's because the fund is managed by the department, and they are making judgments on projects, and the nature of the two bills that we have before us allow for levels of flexibility that would allow for those projects to occur. So even without the chairman's amendment, I think it would come very close to, if not completely, covering all $75 million, which are before us right now in the capital budget. And I won't get too much into what the chairman said a minute ago about that particular project, but that project is, in fact, a $13 million project that is before us. The $35 million, just so you understand sort of from a historic standpoint what's going on here, the Clean Water Commerce Act came into effect a few years ago, and this is just a re-upping of it. So although it wasn't reflected in this year's capital budget, because we didn't get to the sunset until this year, $10 million already was coming out of the fund. So it's really an additional $10 million from what had been going on all along. The money and the projects that are listed could very well qualify for money through the Clean Water Commerce Act, further reducing sort of the pressure on the fund that you're concerned about. Additionally, there is a 15% set aside that is dedicated for disparity communities. So additionally, projects that folks are concerned about also could fall within that. Even though, and this was a choice that was made, even though they may not be the best quite bang for the buck, we still thought it was critically important to give attention to those communities. So my belief is that this amendment, the amendment from the chair, did provide some space, if you will, particularly in the context of the fact that the capital budget was put together and presented before this process went forward. But again, I believe it would have been, because of the way everything functions, even with both his bill and my bill passing, that there is the movement and ability to accommodate everything on that list that exists right now. So it's my belief, again, that with these changes, also noting the fact, again, that the Clean Water Commerce is just really an additional $10 million, that these projects will and should be taken care of in the future. With that, I would ask that we reject the amendment on the floor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Senator from Middle Eastern Shore.
Thank you very much. I'm a little sensitive about Dorchester County. As you all know, Valley Proteins is in my neck of the woods. So I just want to make some clarification, since we're picking on Dorchester Valley Proteins and a business in a disparity county, if you will, where we do get a little bit of property tax from them. But anyway, yeah, this has been an ongoing project in our local jurisdiction, as you know. It's not under a consent order, and actually, MDE's been working very carefully with them to develop some new complex ways of dealing with nitrogen and phosphorus, because this is important, and we're going to talk, it's DAF. And we want to make sure, and the department wants to make sure, that we have alternate uses for this. And we have other ways of dealing with it. And the amount of nutrients that we get, reduction of nutrients that we get, this is very much worth it. Now, I would say we have another organization in our state called Empower Maryland. And I would just say, are they providing any grants or subsidy to businesses? Look at that. So I just be careful, if you will, pointing the finger at some of our businesses. Wastewater treatment is wastewater treatment. The reduction of phosphorus and nitrogen is important, that we do reduce it and get it out of the Chesapeake Bay to clean it up. And I think this is a good investment. So just point of clarification. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Senator from the 34th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the world's talking climate change. Maryland has a unique problem. It's polluting the Chesapeake Bay. And I appreciate the Chairman of Finance talking about the fact that there's money to cover some of these projects, but you're taking money out of a fund, and if it's not these projects, it's other projects that are being pushed. We're 7 million Marylanders in the world on a little piece of land that's already doing a pretty good job of trying to to mitigate carbon. And in the end, no matter what we do, it ain't going to make or break anything on global warming. We're just a little piece of the big puzzle. And whatever we do is easily offset by people in other countries who could care less about pollution in general. And but I can tell you one thing is 100% of what we spend in Maryland on cleaning up the bay cleans up the bay. Every bit of it reduces nitrogen, reduces other pollutants in the bay. And to pull money out of a fund that's 100% dedicated to cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay is just wrong. So I support this amendment very strongly. Thank you.
All right, questions on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay.
Roll call.
Senators request a roll call. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Would anybody wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have an amendment 173-424/1.
All right, give us 1 second. This is where we deeply miss our pages. All right, we're up on the floor system. Senator may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And what this amendment does is builds on what the discussion that we've been having. As has been stated by a number of my colleagues, currently this bill, if it goes forward, takes $35 million from the Bay Restoration Fund. And what this amendment would do, instead of taking that money from the Bay Restoration Fund for the tree planting program, it would have the governor take that money from the general fund. I just want to briefly touch on, I'm not familiar with the project the chairman brought up, but I do have the list of all the projects. And as you just scan through them all, the applications, a lot of them are, quite frankly, Western Maryland, Eastern Shore, smaller towns. One of them, I'll put down the reason they listed, equipment is old, antiquated, obsolete. So I just want to talk about briefly, it concerns me when we take money that this Bay Restoration Fund money is essentially infrastructure money. It's money that is used to have a cleaner bay, cleaner drinking water, and this is such a problem in so many of our towns. And I'll just share two in my district I'm dealing with now. The town with the lowest income in my county, the residents were told, it's okay that your water is brown, it is safe. So my residents are drinking, in the wealthiest state in the country, one of the wealthiest, a whole town, not a whole town, but a large percentage of people in the town are drinking brown water right now and showering at times in brown water. And then another one of my municipalities, and I'm working with the budget committee and the governor trying to get money. They just need $1 million clarifier. And I've got another municipality, sits right on the Potomac River, where their stormwater is obsolete. Right on the river. All their stormwater overflow goes right in the river because their infrastructure is completely obsolete. And in fact, a couple years ago, half the town's water supply was ruled unsafe by MDE, and we had to shut it down. So the town now, the other half, another town that's probably second poorest, third poorest in the county, is forced to pay higher water rates. And so my point with all of this saying is, if you look through this application that we're taking this $35 million from, and planting trees is a noble thing. I planted a little tree in my yard this year. That's a noble thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we have towns that are full of, I feel like these towns are the forgotten men and women of this state. All these programs and everything we talk about down here, somehow it never filters down to these small towns. I just don't know that if my colleague from the shore very well said it, I don't know if the body is familiar with that there are places in the state where people are told to drink brown drinking water. And now we're going to take $35 million of infrastructure. And if you look at this, the projects, broken pipes, outdated pipes, overflowing sewage. We're going to take those, and many of these towns in my area are right on the water, on the Potomac, on Monocacy, they're right there. So with the massive infrastructure problems that we have, so many parts of this state were laid out. I mean, you're talking 19th century water infrastructure and plumbing. And the fact that we're taking $35 million away, again, a noble thing to plant trees, but if we're going to do that, let it come from the general fund. Let it not come from a dedicated fund that's used to fix infrastructure problems, problems that directly affect the health of our citizens, directly impact waste and water going into the Potomac and other places that is dirty. So I would urge the body to adopt this amendment.
Senator moves the amendment. Senator, I don't believe that the Bay Restoration does drinking water. The point is well received, but I don't think, maybe the chairman can clarify.
if I could elaborate a little bit, when you're dealing with, if you look at the projects here, it's dealing with water lines and infrastructure. So first off, if a town has to go through and fix all these water lines, it's all coming from the enterprise funds. I don't know if you've had anyone here who's been a mayor, municipal official, they can tell it's all coming from the town's little enterprise fund, which they can't even afford to keep up with what's there. So when you're taking money that is away from the sewage or the sewage pipes and all that, and it does affect water, because the towns, when you recycle your wastewater, it comes back into drinking water. So it's all in the same sewage systems. It's all in the same water infrastructure and piping. And it all comes from these small towns, their enterprise funds, where they can't keep up with this 19th century infrastructure. So with all due respect, it's all, if I could just make it clear, it's all infrastructure money, and it's all the same for a town that's enterprise fund and is trying to keep up with 19th century infrastructure with regulations that we're putting on that are very strict.
Senator, Chair recognizes the chair of the committee. Floor leader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I rise to urge a red vote on this amendment. The Bay Restoration Fund is not an infrastructure fund. I mean, if the senator wants to start a Green New Deal here in Maryland to take care of infrastructure, count me in. But when this started, it was to rebuild and renovate major wastewater treatment plants and then minor wastewater treatment plants. It is not an infrastructure bill. And while, saying planting trees is noble, personally I find that dismissive. The scientists say that you get better return on nitrogen reduction by planting trees than for removal from stormwater. So this is not about you or I planting a tree. We're talking about 5 million trees, putting them near buffers and streams. That has been proven by science, and you can talk to scientists to see if that's true or not. So I think it is a little dismissive to say a pretty tree for our kids, when in fact science says it is a worthwhile investment. And at the same time, as I said, it is not an infrastructure bill, and if there's brown water, it happened before this bill went into place, and it should be addressed. And I think you should speak to the governor about that, and putting in money in the supplemental budget to address that, because none of our citizens should have to drink brown water or experience what happened in Michigan and Flint. So for these reasons, Mr. President, I'd urge a red vote.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from District 5, followed by the Vice Chair of Budget and Tax.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to be very clear. This bill, as currently drafted, is taking specially designated taxpayer funds away from cleaning up wastewater treatment plants and failing septics, particularly in the critical area. I have to say it's not an infrastructure fund, I strongly disagree with that. It clearly, wastewater treatment facilities, I'm not sure what else you'd call them in infrastructure. And the reason you'll hear us speaking against this idea is this is something we can see the BRF, the Bay Restoration Fund, having a positive impact on the environment and the health of Chesapeake Bay. We can see it. And we're going to be taking millions and millions of dollars out of that fund to put towards things that certainly planting trees will have a positive environmental impact, but that's easily something that could be coming from a general fund, which is what the gentleman's amendment seeks to do. It's And as far as the overall impact on the climate, how much impact on overall climate change will this program have? Again, planting trees is great, but we know what's been happening with the Bay Restoration Fund. It has improved. It has helped to improve the quality and health of the Chesapeake Bay and a lot of the tributaries, and it helps towns. The gentleman from Frederick mentioned a couple of in his community. In my county, we've seen a positive impact from being able to get wastewater treatment and other things taken care of. We should preserve. This is really critical funding for the health of the Chesapeake Bay. That it's documented that it's working. I don't know why we would want to divert course. We've made great progress. We've cleaned up a lot of the really big wastewater treatment plant issues, the priorities. Why we would want to divert from that? The state of Maryland and previous General Assemblies, when they passed the flush fee in the early 2000s, and then when it was doubled, we promised that money was going to this purpose and this alone. That was the promise. And we should keep that promise, and we should figure out another way to fund planting trees. The funding coming from another source if we decide that is a priority, a public policy priority. And this bill goes far beyond just planting trees, but that's the subject of what we're talking about here. We should keep the promise we made to taxpayers that previous General Assemblies made, and I support the gentleman's amendment. I think it's a very good amendment. Again, let's keep funding something that we know is cleaning up the environment and working, and not divert money from it at this critical time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
President,
Chair,
I just want to correct.
Senator, it's out of order. Chair recognizes the Chair of Budget and Tax.
Well, actually, I think I was probably going to do the same thing. So precision in talking about this issue is important because there are a lot of different things that are going on here. And the gentleman from Carroll a minute ago mentioned about wastewater treatment plants. Wastewater treatment plants, let's hear this loud and clear, both major and minor are first in line before any other funding. There is no chance that they will not get funded. So let's be very clear about that. There are parts of this that gets complicated when you start talking about it because, quite frankly, some of it sounds similar, but they're very different. Septics also are going to get funded. It's got a separate component of this fund. It has nothing to do with the wastewater area in which these funds are from. The gentleman from Frederick also was talking about water quality and drinking water quality, incredibly important, but not, although an infrastructure issue, and although these are some infrastructure issues, it's not an infrastructure issue that isn't being handled in another way or should be handled in another way. We have clean water funds, drinking water funds, that are related to fixing those problems and should be. So again, talking about this and recognizing that there are different elements of doing the whole full scheme work of water quality is important. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Senator from the Lower Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm focusing my comments on the funding source to take it from the general funds. I appreciate that the sponsors of earlier amendment actually took one of my projects off the chopping block in Fruitland. I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the sponsors' comments about the value of the tree planting program. But my comments are focused on the funding source. So even when we're talking about taking funds from the Bay Restoration Fund, I'm even thinking of the out years, that is the funding source for the out years as well. And so it does affect areas like mine and, including Crisfield, Pocomoke City, Snow Hill, Fruitland was mentioned, Princess Anne and Smith Island off of Crisfield. These are the type of areas that have benefited in the past from this fund, but I'm also thinking about the communities in my district that aren't even on the list yet because they're still working through these issues. So again, my comments are focused on the funding source and I'm supporting the amendment to take the funds from the general fund as opposed to the Bay Restoration Fund. And I urge my colleagues to support it because it will affect your future projects as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Question is on the amendment. Chair recognizes the Senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak to the amendment and relate a little bit to the amendment we had before, not to disagree with my outstanding chairman over there, but I have a little different thought process. Now, some of you remember when we passed the first flush fee many years ago, a lot of us people from the rural part of the state voted for that because we were assured that once the 66 or 67 major plants were completed, they would move on to the minor plants. Because our comment was, why should we support this if we're not going to get anything out of it? So we did support it. Well, I'd say the majority of this side of the aisle when I was back across the hall in the other house on this particular issue. Now, the chairman both are right. This fund mainly was to do the 66, 67 first, and they are basically finished as I understand it. And then there's like 3 other categories under this funding. Next would be minor sewage plants, which there's not a tremendous number of those, and they're mainly to take the NR or whatever it's called out of the system. And some of them have been completed, some of them are being worked on. Getting planned, some of them are in the planning stage, and that needs to keep going. But one of the problems, and I agree with my chairman of Budget and Tax, yeah, they're going to get funded, but if you take money out and money slows down coming in, it may put these projects back. Ultimately, they would get completed. But some of these are under consent orders, Mr. President. And that means you can't do a whole lot of expansion in your community. So unless the department is nice to you and says if you agree to a consent order, we'll let you keep expanding until we get to the point that we can provide you construction funding. That mainly is going to occur in the rural parts of the state. So we're going to be hindered then that we can't expand in our small communities because we had to put funding to plant trees or whatever, do something else. Next in line is combined sewer overflow. Now, if you don't know what that is, back years and years and years ago, that was what these communities were told to do. To hook stormwater and sewage in the same pipe to dilute the sewage, and that was a way to treat it. And a lot of communities did that. Then they determined, well, that's really, we really need to do better, so we need to disconnect these pipes, and that's what part of this is, and it started about 10 years ago for a 15-year program to take care of this. So a lot of these communities are in the 10th year of doing that. And then finally, it's the stormwater, which is the bottom of the rung. In this side of the category, the individual septics are separate category. So my concern, you take a small community, 600 or 700 people, the state comes in and says you have a minor system, you need to do this, you need to do that, we'll help you pay for it. I don't know how they're going to pay for these things. So then they're stuck because they can't expand. Now we already have what's called a CREP program, which the chairman of EE mentioned, I think, several times. That plants trees. Probably could have just put more money in that program out of the general fund to plant the trees. I'm all for trees. We got bunches of trees out in my neck of the state. Matter of fact, we'd like to share some of them with you. I've even offered, and I'm not being funny about this, in program Open Space, to take some of that money and buy a lot of land in the metropolitan area. Look at the last year how much land's been bought in the metropolitan area through program Open Space to preserve the land versus the rural parts of the state. Very little. Very little. So we need to, I think, look and be fair about this. Maybe we got the cart before the horse, Mr. President. Maybe we should fund these projects, and what's left in that year would go to this program. That should be fair. I think everybody sitting in here supports clean air and clean water. If they don't, I think they need a different thought process. But there's other ways of doing it versus this, to be fair across the board to everybody, because this leans, in my opinion, and if you read the whole thing, and I'll bring up some more amendments later, supportive of the metropolitan area versus rural areas of the state. So I would support the amendment, Mr. President. I asked others too also. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Senator from District 9.
Thank you, colleagues. I've been looking at this fund for 2 years, looking for money for Ellicott City to help with flooding, and it pains me to sit over here and have this become a partisan issue. The fact is, the climate is changing, and what that means is that there's going to be a lot of changes, and we need to do everything we can to bring the greenhouse gases down. And at the same time, we have to take care of our state. That means flood levels are rising, agricultural lands are becoming salty. Like, there's going to be more flash floods. This is an issue we need to come together on. Now, I supported the policy of this bill. I voted green on the bill in committee. I'm supporting the Chairman of Budget and Taxes bill on climate solutions now. These are things we have to do, but we can't forget about our infrastructure. My understanding is that there's money coming from the federal government to deal with infrastructure. And I hope that this body can look at the issues of flooding, flood resiliency, crippling infrastructure with the same kind of passion that looks at greenhouse gases. This is not a partisan issue. And I wish everybody was paying attention to this, because this matters. I'll be supporting the bill, I'll be supporting this amendment, and I hope when the State Revolving Loan Fund on Resilience come to the floor, everybody supports that too. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak on the amendment, on the senator's amendment? Yes, Chair recognizes the Minority Leader.
Thank you. And I know from our side we didn't mean this to be a partisan issue. We're just trying to bring forth solutions. And I just want to take it back to the 60,000, 30,000 foot. And I don't know why this has to be an either-or scenario. It's either the Bay Restoration Fund or it's the general fund. I think we can keep the money in the Bay Restoration Fund and also plant trees. I think that's a win-win situation. I think it's a very thoughtful amendment. We agree with the goals. We want to support this. If this amendment gets on there, I'm going to be voting for the bill. So this is not like a poison pill or anything like that. I just think it's a better option to help our locals get their projects and also plant the trees. Again, it just seems like a win-win situation, and I would ask you to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, are there any senators? Senator from District 5 is all set. All right. Oh, nope. Chair recognizes Senator from District 5.
Just a quick clarifying question. The Chairman of Budget and Tax earlier was saying, I felt like in response to my comments that this fund, this is not going to take away funds. So I guess I have a question. I wonder if the Chairman could yield the Budget and Tax for a question.
The Chair of the Budget and Tax yield. Senator may proceed.
So I'm not trying to characterize your comments, but it seemed like you were saying that the concerns we're saying about the money being taken away isn't going to happen, and you were talking about how this is coming from other funds. But my understanding, and I'll just say my question, my understanding is the stuff that may be on the chopping block, based on the notes I have, is things like septic connections, stormwater improvements, not necessarily next year, obviously, or ones that are currently happening, but down the road. Isn't it fair to say that taking, this amount of money out is going to impact things being added to the priority list in the coming 2, 3, 4 years?
So first, I just wanted to say that I was just trying to clarify sort of the use of some words, because I think your initial comments talked about wastewater treatment plants. And with regard to wastewater treatment plants, which is a big part of this, it's actually what started all of this, quite frankly.
Right.
The 67 majors and then the minors, right? And the minors are still under construction. My point was simply none of those
will be harmed at all, or in competition, I should say, in competition at all, because of either of these pieces of legislation. They're very different than some of the other things that you mentioned, right? The septic also, which has its separate funding area within the Bay Restoration Fund, those kinds of issues won't be in competition, if you will, with these bills.
Well, what, and if not to interrupt you, but if I could just to clarify, what will be in competition? Because something has to be, right? I mean, so is it the stormwater?
Right. Stormwater certainly is a possibility. It really, you'd have to look at the nature of each of the plant, each of the projects. You might be concerned, and Cecil, about a connect with Triumph Industrial Park to the county sanitary sewer. I mean, there are things that are on the list that don't fall into the big titles, if you will. But you know, not that they're not worthy projects.
Yeah, I mean, as I look at the list, I mean, there's some big items on here. None of them are in my district specifically, but they could be things in the future, and we've got some projects working, you know. So, I mean, just trying to understand, make sure I was understanding the specificity of the language, but I do appreciate your answer.
I mean, look, as I went through this and sort of in painstaking detail, sort of dividing out the different kinds of projects there are, which ones would never be in competition, which may be in competition, and then there's a group that actually could receive funding through, and we really haven't even talked about the Clean Water Commerce Bill, but there are projects that are on the list that are feared to be lost, if you will, that could very well qualify under that bill. So it is a complicated equation. It's not as straightforward as I felt like it was being presented a little earlier. Is that
Thank you very much. Mr. President, just in closing my comments, and thank you for the answers. In closing for my comments, I just want to say, again, I think the main point of what I'm trying to say, and I think you're hearing from a number of us, is this fund was set aside to be specifically for a purpose, which is cleaning up. It was wastewater treatment, but also stormwater, septic. It all deals with cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay and improving our water quality and waterways. So I strongly object to the idea that we're going to take money from this fund when we promised it was going to be going to one thing and be borrowing it. If we want to say the mission's accomplished and we want to abolish the fund, that might be a different issue, but that's not what this bill is. So I support the gentleman's amendment, but I do appreciate the answers and the discussion.
Thank you, Senator. All right, questions on the amendment. On the amendment, Senator has requested a roll call vote. Any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the Senator's amendment fails. Are there further amendments? Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have another amendment, 133626/1.
133626. All right, Senator, if the Senator would, we do have the amendment. If the Senator would just move the amendment, I think we will then entertain a motion to recess.
Sure, be happy to.
The Senator moves the amendment. All right, the amendment is before the body. We will take this up as unfinished business tomorrow. Senators, we got a lot of work. There's a lot of calendars behind us. So crossover is coming quickly. So just keep that in mind. This is the Senate. We debate issues, but just keep in mind we got a lot of work to do. All right. Let's see. Let's do committee announcements. Committee announcements. Chair of Finance. Chair of Finance. Any committee announcements?
Yes. We will have hearings at 1 p.m. and
I would say maybe 1:30, Senator.
Oh, is it? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah.
1:30.
1:45.
I'm sorry.
145.
145 for finance. 145. Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Chair of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs.
Mr. President, we too will meet at 1:45 for bill hearings.
145 for EHE. Chair recognizes the Chair of Budget and Tax.
We'll meet at 1:30 and for hearings, and capital budget meets at 3.
1:30 and 3. All right. Chair recognizes the Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll meet at 1:45, followed by for bill hearings, followed by a voting session.
All right. 1:45 then voting. Other announcements. Other announcements. Yes. Chair recognizes the Chair of the Protocol Committee.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's the second week for our pages. So they are returning. They are with us virtually. So I just want to say welcome, pages. We are delighted that you are joining us. And ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I hope you've had an opportunity to touch base with them and get an opportunity to share ideas and share their insights about what they're learning while they're with us. So we will name them off and put their beautiful faces up on the board on Friday.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
We would be getting their steps in today with all these amendments. All right, other announcements? Other announcements? If not, I have one special announcement from members of our chamber, not members themselves. We had 2 birthdays this weekend. Well, one was yesterday and one was on Sunday. Our Sergeant at Arms, Sergeant at Arms Steve Stewart, and then our Corporal James Herod, who I don't know where James is, but just want to wish them a very happy birthday this past week. All right. Any other announcements for the good of the order? If not, let's do a quorum call before we recess.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence in the chamber? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate of Maryland stand in recess until Wednesday, March 10th at 10:30 a.m.
Without objection, so ordered. Stay safe. Wear the mask in the buildings.